want you to hear what we have to say. I think everybody here, we know everybody, so that's not a big deal. So we'll get started with that. Julie, if you're going to do that, I appreciate your help.
No problem.
Building, that's a shift. That's a shift in what we have now. We presently have a pre-K through 6 building, and then at the high school we have 7 through 12. So that is a shift. We heard from the people, our board has listened to the people. The auditorium has been removed from the proposal. However, the auditorium will be on the ballot in 2014 to benefit our musicals and our music department. It'll be a completely separate issue, probably not much over 1.2 mils, somewhere in that ballpark. Some things to look at on why we need the building. This building was built in 1923. There are older buildings still standing. There's newer buildings still standing. But we have a problem. The infrastructure in this building is deteriorating. And for that reason, we're looking to build new. That was determined by the High School Facilities Commission back in 2008, I believe, when they came in to review our buildings. Some of the things we've looked at, and Ms. Brinkman, you're here this evening and you're familiar with these things. Our ceiling beams in the 3rd floor classroom, they broke away last year from the wall, dropped 7 inches. That's a problem, ladies and gentlemen. That's repaired at this time, should not have a problem with it again. The question has to be, what other parts of the building are in the same shape? That situation was found when a teacher came into our classroom and saw particles that looked like chalkboard particles laying on her shelf by her marker board. And when they went up above, that's how they found where the beams had rusted through and separated from the building. We're in a building, when the rains come, water leaks through our sidewalls on all 3 floors. And Mrs. Brinkman has done a nice job. Those areas are identified. As you walk our hallways, there are signs up where that leakage occurs, where it creates a problem for our people. Rain also causes our lower level classrooms to flood. That is a pain for us because students and teachers must evacuate the area, be relocated in the school. Certainly we don't have a lot of classrooms to get that done, so what we deal with is classes doubling up in a single room. That type of situation. It certainly reduces your effectiveness in your learning environment. The present classrooms that we have do not require, do not have the needed space to have the student-oriented classrooms that we prefer. It's a better method of teaching, but it takes space and room to spread your people out. The new building will have classrooms that are 900 square feet. In most old buildings, this is a huge concern. Our airflow in this building is severely restricted, which leads to stagnant air in the classrooms, thus causing students health problems. And we have a number of students who have left here and had absentee problems, coughing problems. They move on to the 7th grade, and that is not there. You know, we have an elevator in this building, but it certainly is not handicap accessible. We have stair steps everywhere. First district I've ever been in, where buses have parked side by side to load students. And we do not have the space to put our buses front to back so the students can't walk between them. I give our drivers a lot of credit for the way they deal with the situation and the way they keep it safe, but it certainly is a potential hazard. Why is the time now? What makes it different? The state of Ohio is providing over $7 million towards the new building. By the way, before this is all over, Kevin is going to have some pretty good information for you on the financial end. The economy in our state is such right now where we ought to be able to build for a cheaper rate than projected. No guarantee, everything is projected. Just talking to Greg about that, you know, we don't know where those are going to be until the bids come in. We are investing big dollars in this building, and we still have an old building. We're investing right around $23,000, $24,000 to repair a wall up here above the auditorium. We thought we had a leak in the auditorium roof. In reality, what we have is the wall up there that is leaking. The water is coming down under the roof, and you see the damage back there where the partials are removed. That's what it's doing to us. We have contracted with Mosher Construction. They'll be taking care of that in the very near future. We're also investing dollars in the repair of our modules. And I just talked to Kim, our librarian. Our books are always damp. Our roofs were repaired this summer. We need new windows. Those modulars are a continual pain for us to keep them up, keep them where they need to be. In our new building, all students will be housed in a pre-K through 8 facility. I think this is important to us all the way through. If we're going to build a new building, what does it mean to us? Where do we come out ahead? We will have more efficient energy costs. For what it's worth, we're looking to replace the boilers this summer at the high school. And because of the boilers we're putting in that are 97% efficient compared to the ones we have, we're projecting at this time a savings of somewhere around $40,000 a year. Scott Schrader at Pogemeyer said that could easily be a minimum savings. We'll also look at alternate energy forms and see what we can do to reduce our costs in that way. We'll greatly reduce maintenance costs, and there's a couple things here that I think you need to be well aware of. Even though maintenance costs will be reduced because the building is new, we are required by the OSFC to add 5/10 of a mil of continuous permanent improvement money that can only be used to maintain this building. And we intend to do that, and then when we do that, when the bond issue is passed, we will reduce, first, our collection. When the bond issue is passed in March, and our collection in January, February of next year, we'll reduce our collection by 5/10 of a mil. If we're so fortunate we will come back in the fall, the PI levy does need to be reduced, we will also reduce the amount we're asking for by 5/10 of a mil. So that it's no more of a burden to our taxpayer, it's just a matter of spreading the money where it needs to be spread to benefit the district. And as I mentioned earlier, right now we have serious problems with air quality, airflow. The air quality in the classroom environment will be greatly improved when we build a new building. Classroom space will improve, as I mentioned earlier. We'll go to 900 square feet to allow for students, student-driven classrooms. The wiring in our present building lays above. It's open and lays above our drop ceilings. In the new building, we'll have state-of-the-art wiring, which will improve the use of our technology, including our telephone system. You know, you look at the situation and you wonder how we got where we're at. But there just is no parking here at the elementary. And that creates a hazard in the afternoons also, with the employee parking, and then with parents picking up their students and their parking, and then the crowded conditions with our buses. It creates a very, very difficult situation. In our new building, our bus flow will be to the back of the building, dropping off and picking up our students there. With our automobiles, they will drop and pick up students in front of the building. My apologies. I'm not sure it's good enough to turn it off. The other thing we get with the new building that people don't realize is there are funds in that bond issue, as prescribed by the OSFC, that is used for new classroom furniture. Ladies and gentlemen, this is key. Since I've been here, I think I made it clear one of our forums last time, that one of the first things I did with our administrative team was I walked the buildings. And we walked the buildings looking for areas that needed to be repaired. And we had an easy 2-page list for both buildings. At this point, we have done very little to attack that list at the high school. Our dollars have mostly been put here in the elementary, and other than we're going to put boilers in this summer, it should cost us a tremendous amount of money. But there are so many needs at a high school, whether making it, upgrading it to wireless, upgrading our windows, upgrading our roofing. We did invest money. It's amazing what you don't know about your building. A firm came through this fall and looked at the dome ceiling over our library. And they said, when is the last time that you had that coated and sealed? There was no last time. It was when it was built. So they told us that dome, it thins out, and even hail can cause it to break. Well, this is a firm that wanted to make money off of us, so we called the manufacturer. And rightfully so. Every 7 to 9 years, the dome needs to be coated to protect it. Lose that dome, and you're talking an $80,000, $90,000 expenditure. There are people out there that think we ought to renovate, and I can certainly appreciate their stance. You need to look hard at our situation. The first thing we need to look at is the fact that our infrastructure is not where it needs to be. However, the OSC, who determined that we needed to build, has also determined that it would cost in excess of $12 million to renovate the elementary building. The proposed new building will cost us approximately $15 million.
Is that including demolition costs?
Yes. Yes, that includes everything. Good point. For $12 million, we still would need to pass a bond issue, and we still have an old building. Another factor for us is renovation could not be accomplished in just the summer months. So we would have to displace 600 students. If we were, like some of the Toledo schools, Toledo Scott that was just renovated, they put their student population in a junior high close by. I think it was DeVoe. We would not have a place for 600 students. I think I'm going to turn it over to Kevin now. He can talk about money, and then we certainly want to have a lot of questions, or if you have questions as we go forward, please ask.
This chart here, we've shown in a couple other forms. This is all the levies that we currently have on the books. It shows what type of levy it is, the length of the levy, and then most of you here are going to be looking at the first column, the residential agriculture. That's what you'll be paying on. So we have the 4 continuing levies, and those obviously don't expire. We have the 2008 permanent improvement levy that was passed, I believe, in November of '08, and that will expire at the end of next year, and that was a 3.5 mil levy. We have the August 2009 emergency levy that will expire at the end of 2014, and then the emergency levy that we just passed last May, and that just started collection this month. We did have one levy that just rolled off the books, and that emergency levy replaced that. Go ahead, Jim. Thank you. With that, we've got about a 4 or 5 year plan for our levies. March 2012, we'll have the bond levy for the pre-K through 8 building here in Woodville, and pending that passage, we could put the renewal of the permanent improvement levy on as early as November of this year. As John stated earlier, we will lower that by $0.5 mil to offset the OSFC maintenance requirement that will go on with the building in March. And then in 2013, the plan is to renew the $829,000 emergency levy that would pass in 2009. 2014, we'll have the bond levy for the auditorium that will be placed in Elmore. And like John said, also that'll be about somewhere between 1 and 1.5 mils, depending on the valuation and current construction costs at the time. And then in 2015, we'll have the renewal of the $600,000 emergency levy passed in 2011. So although we will be on the ballot in each of the next 4 to 5 years, other than the bond issue this March and then in 2014 for the auditorium, nothing will be new money. We don't foresee any new operating money levies coming on in the next 4 to 5 years. So it'll either be the bond issues or the renewals. So we want to keep all that in front of you and know that we do have a plan and we are looking out in the future.
You flip back one.
Can you go back one slide?
I want to know what the mill of the 2 emergencies were.
Oh, sure.
Because we're looking at
The 2009 was 5.55. You can see it. Let's see it right here, and then the one in March is 3.95.
So the one that the permanent levy that they're making us put on is only a $0.5 mil.
Right.
So it's not like we could trade one for those.
No. If this permanent improvement levy were continuing here, we wouldn't have to add that 0.5 mils this March. But since it is an expiring, that's why we have to put it on. So if when that was passed, if that would have been passed as a continuing, we would be having this. And the 2 emergency levies, those are kind of misleading. It's not truly for emergency causes. A lot of people think, like when we had the flooding here in the gymnasium, that's why we needed the emergency levy. The title's misleading. All emergency really means is it's for a set dollar amount. So, like the permanent improvement levy was 3.5 mils. That'll always be at 3.5 tax rate. The effective rate will go back and forth. But the emergency levy will generate a specific dollar amount every year. So that will never go up and down with valuation.
Kevin, I do have a question. Go back again. I'm sorry, go ahead. It's not Kevin, what is the difference between our tax rate and our effective rate? I see that there's a 3.5 mil permanent improvement levy what does the effective rate mean on the far right-hand side at 3.411?
Well, the far right is the non-residential agriculture, that's commercial and things like that. We'll talk about the residential ag because that's what most of you here will be using. We'll use the 2008 permanent improvement levy for an example. So when that was passed at 3.5 mils. As the valuation of the district goes up or down, well, normally goes up, so that effective rate will go down. So we're not collecting more money than what we were that first year. So if that, it's at 3.27 now, if our valuations would go up, you would essentially be collecting more money because you'd be paying more on your home. So that effective rate will come down, so it's not a unvoted increase in taxes. Okay, so you're not going to be paying more on your tax bill, if that makes sense. I'm not sure I'm explaining it exactly right, but
I have another question that goes along with that.
mm-hmm.
When we come back for the permanent improvement renewal, and if the effective rate is 3.27, we'll drop the half mil from that?
Well, we could do yes or no.
Thank you.
If we wanted to collect the same amount of money that we're collecting now, we wouldn't necessarily have to drop it a whole half mil. If the valuations go up, that effective rate will go down. Okay? So, how do I want to put this? So if we do lower that by half a mil, we could still be collecting more than we are now. If that.
What happens, since we're gonna be asking for a lot of levies in the next couple of years? I mean, it's very likely Woodmore is gonna drop 9 or 11. What does that do to us if we don't get those passed? The 2 emergency levies up there, like when they go for going 13 and 15 or whatever.
Well, if the 2009 emergency levy doesn't pass, that's $829,000 that we would be out on. So you'd have some pretty drastic cuts being made. This past May of 2011, when we were talking about making cuts, that was $235,000 that we were looking at possibly having to make. So you can multiply that by 3.5, 4 times.
I know the fact that we're asking for less money than what we asked for in the previous levy, but any way to condense it, we're relying on the next emergency levy. We're not asking for money every year or every dollar.
With the emergency levies, you can combine those and make it into one. So it'd be, instead of an $829,000 levy and a $600,000 levy, you could make it a $1,429,000 levy. There's pluses and minuses to that. The plus is you're only asking for 1 instead of 2. The downside is if that doesn't pass, you're in a world for rather than just one of those not passing, or something along that line. But as a finance committee and the board whole, we are looking at those options moving forward. These are the figures for the March bond levy. The first 3 lines are not changed at all from November. The state's still pitching in 32% of the master facility costs, which is just over $7 million. So the local share is 68% and $14.9 million. The major difference is the locally funded initiative. That'll be $800,000 this March, where it was 4.5 in November. Like John mentioned, we're getting the auditorium off of there and on in 2014, so the $800,000 here is for the additional classrooms that we need at the pre-K through 8 building that OSFC won't provide. And the reason for that is OSFC's rule is, their idea is each classroom should be occupied 100% of the time. So if, let's say a third grade class goes to music, OSFC thinks a class should then move into that third grade classroom for that period. Well, in a smaller school like ours, that's not an ideal or even practical solution. So we'll need $800,000, will give us about 4 additional classrooms in the new building. So that brings the total cost of the project to $22.7 million, and when you take off the $7 million from the state, it brings our share to $15,709,840. And then the OSFC estimated renovation cost was just over $12 million that John mentioned, so about a $3.7 million difference.
Kevin,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong though, but the OFC renovation cost is only to make this building renovated for a K-6.
That is correct.
So for us to deal with the other $2 million over the Hedrick wing isn't really considered in this.
Right.
It's actually $4.
Right. That's just specific to this building here in Woodville. And like Chad mentioned, I don't know if you heard, but the estimated over to fix the Hedrick wing is about $2 million. So the true pre-K through 8 renovation cost is about $14 million. This is just a little comparison of the new pre-K through 8 building proposal and renovation. Again, the cost to the taxpayer would be $15.7 million for the new building, and an estimated $12 million here in Woodville for the renovation. The length would be different. With the new building, we could go out to 37 years. With renovation, you can't go that long because you can't guarantee that the length of the repairs will last for that 37 years. You know, if you're to put on a new roof, they can only guarantee 25 years, sometimes 30. So what they do is they would look at all of our renovations that we'll be putting into the new building, average out the lifetime span of those upgrades, and that would be the length that we would be allowed to go out to. Typically 25 is about the longest that you'd be able to go out to, so that's why the difference there. The assumed interest rate we'd be paying would be 5% for the new building and 4.5% for the renovation, which brings the millage for the new building to 5.3 mils, and the renovation would be 5. So just a 0.43 difference to get a completely new K through 8 building as opposed to renovating K through 6. And the yearly cost to a $100,000 homeowner for the new building is $166.29 per year, and the renovation would be $153.13. So again, it's just a little over $13 a year difference to get a completely new building, technology, capabilities, and furniture, and everything that comes with the new building. And I believe that's the last slide. So if anybody has any questions for John or myself, or we have Craig Stow, our architect here.
We talked about alternate forms of energy. I'm no expert on it, but are we going to rely on more than just the salesman of the windmill coming here? Is there any really realistic? I mean, can we? I don't know if like geothermal. That seems to be like the most capable for a home or something like that. I don't think it's capable for a house this size. But even if the investment was greater, the ultimate outcome of, like, say, a geothermal system.
Geothermal has been working for a lot of school buildings.
Okay.
What we do is we have a test firm come in here, they drill one well, and they see what kind of a heat exchange rate they can establish in that well. It depends on how much groundwater there is and how quickly that groundwater flows. Based on that heat exchange rate, they determine how many wells they need to drill. And then sometimes, we did a building up in Sylvania Schools, the new Hillview Elementary School. The cost of a gas-fired boiler system was the same as the geothermal system, but the geothermal system saves about 1/3 of the energy costs over a high-efficiency boiler. We haven't drilled the holes here yet, but we think because we know there's a lot of groundwater in the area, that we'll be okay.
I mean, if it's a closed system, why does it matter?
Closed loop system.
Yeah, closed loop system, why does it matter about the groundwater?
Because it's the groundwater flowing through at 50 degrees or so that you can inject, or you can take heat out of in the wintertime when you need to bring heat into the building, or you can inject summer heat into it to cool the building. So if the groundwater isn't there, heat doesn't exchange as well with the ground. And if the water isn't flowing, in the wintertime you tend to make the ground colder, and it gets harder and harder to get the heat out of the ground. So that's what establishes that heat exchange rate. And in Northwest Ohio, the geothermal system's been working out very well. We've used them in several school buildings. We've had a couple of years of experience on the utility rates, and we are saving about a third of the energy. It's working out real well for us.
I mean, like windmills, that's off the table, right? I mean, we're not going to maintain windmills every 2 years.
There's only one windmill that I'm aware of in a Northwest Ohio school building. It's at Crosby Elementary School and Toledo Public Schools. They did that more as a showcase, and it really doesn't contribute to the energy needs of the building. Plus, it isn't baseline enough. It's just when the wind's blowing, and the amount of energy you get from those just doesn't do enough for a building.
I guess with solar panels, I'd be concerned about vandalism and maintenance. I mean, kids like to throw rocks. I do.
We've not used solar panels at any school just because they don't contribute enough energy to run the school building, and they are subject to vandalism. We are putting solar panels on a new lead building for the Toledo Area Rapid Transit Authority right now. But those, again, that's funded by the federal government. They got a special grant for it, and it's really a demonstration project. It's not practical yet.
There's a pretty good incentive. I think it's a third right now for a homeowner for geothermal. Would that apply it any way to this project?
You have to pay taxes to get a tax credit. That's the problem with that. I do have a geothermal system at my home. I put it in to see how it would work. I took advantage of that third cost back in, and that made it even pay off better. But the school district doesn't pay taxes, so they don't get a tax credit.
Yes, Mrs. Brennan?
I just wanted to emphasize on some things that John had stated about our building, and I want to try to make it more relatable to parents and community members. If you're a parent of a preschool child, I'm trying to think of some issues that we have with the preschool area. They're in the basement, so the airflow down there isn't very good. It's dark down there. Restrooms, small restrooms down there. If you're a K-1 parent, some issues that we have down there is I find that security is an issue. They're all the way at the other end of the building, so if we have a child going to the office area, they're walking through the building on their own. Again, issues with corners and turns. Also, when it rains very heavily, there's water that goes underneath the doors, so we have that issue. If you're a parent of a second grade child, again, I've had cause and concerns about the airflow down there. When we get heavy rains, we have to have a room taken out and have the students leave the room because we find the rain or we find the water that morning. The custodians get right on it to start cleaning that up, but to get that dry, it takes the whole day. I know the last time that I gave a tour, I showed some gentlemen the rooms, and we emphasized to them within each of the rooms that we had to have the students leave, there were 50 gallons of water, and the gentleman told me, well, 50 gallons of water isn't that much. It's not that much if you throw 50 gallons of water out in a field, but if you have that in a classroom, that's a lot of water. And it's a whole day that the students had to leave the room. We don't have a lot of room or space here, so as Mr. Fernball said, we have to double up on a room, or we have to place the students in another room, and I've done that too, where the students have grabbed their chairs and their backpacks, moved it down to the other wing, and we placed them in the office for a day. If you're a third grade parent, third grade, okay, some small classrooms, but we have no restrooms on our second floor, so they're going up and down to use the restroom. If you're a fourth grade parent, last year we had to remove a whole classroom from their room for the entire year. We could not let them go back in that room. So not only was that room, did we have the students leave, But then we had the concern of the students underneath the classrooms, fourth graders, and the gate students who were in the basement, just all year having to worry about that roof above them. If you're a fifth grade parent, your child in our science room, as Mr. Fernball stated, we have a wall that is moving away from, the outer wall's moving away from the foundation. So we have the heater vent moving away from that wall. We have small classrooms up there, so it's hard to do activities. And if you're a sixth grade parent, again, we have small classrooms up there. We do have leaks in our sixth grade rooms, so it's hard to do those group activities. Again, we have only the restrooms in the basement. We do have a couple restrooms up on the third floor. But if you're a handicapped child, you can't use the third floor restrooms because you have to go up 4 stairs to get into those restrooms. We currently have a student in the first grade who is handicapped, and so he gets around our building via what is that called? A scooter. He gets around okay in his wing, but when he has to go to the computer lab, or he has to go out to the library, or he comes up to the gym, it takes him quite a while and quite a bit of assistance. And as he stated also, a lot of our books in the library are damp, wet, and our students going in and out of the building to go to the lab or to the library just isn't safe.
I just wanted to comment, very impressed with how you guys have communicated to the community, gotten everything out. I think it's great. It's just a comment, and I do not have the answer, and I'm just I'm trying to give ideas of how we can get awareness, because in my opinion, I've lived here 16 years. I don't remember ever having levies fail until recently. I don't remember ever. They always passed. And to me, that means what has changed? Well, clearly the economy has obviously changed, and I think a lot of it is the money. But my thought is, for some reason, I don't know what you need to do. These are all good facts, unsafe. It scares me. I have a child here. It scares me that they're here sometimes. But for whatever reason, and this is solely my opinion, I don't know if others share it, but I just wanted to, and maybe this has already been said, I haven't come to one in a while, but for some reason, the no voters are very, very passionate about voting no. And I don't know that that's the same about the yes voters. And what can we do to get that same passion with a yes voter? I have to believe people who would want to vote no are so passionate, they write on that calendar, I'm voting that thing down. There is no way that is going to pass. But yet, we have parents of students that don't even bother to vote. What is it going to take to get them to vote yes? And I compare it to your last levy. If we recall, that levy did not pass many times. It only took, in my opinion, that you stated what was going to happen if it wasn't going to pass. And guess what? They woke up. Well, I don't want to give that up. Okay, you must really need this. I'm going to vote yes, and it passed. I don't know that we have done that here. I don't know the answer. It's just an observation. I don't know that we have successfully stated our case why you must vote yes for this. For example, and this is hypothetical. Okay, it costs X amount of dollars a year for someone to pass this levy, this bond to build a new school. What if it does not pass? Eventually, is it to a point where this is so degraded that the kids cannot go here anymore? You just said you cannot afford, you have nowhere to put 600 students. So does that mean, and this is doom and gloom, does that mean they have to go to Eastwood, to Genoa, and possibly pay tuition? Is that cheaper than passing this levy? I know this is doom and gloom, but I think we're to that point. This building is in bad shape.
You're right, because eventually we're going to have to.
I think that needs to be stated somehow. With the facts. I don't have the facts. I'm just saying hypotheticals here. But I really believe we have not woken these yes voters up. They're not awake. The no's are yes. They're awake. They're going to vote that no every time. It's like you had said, I agree. I don't know that you're going to change the mind of a no voter. And how many yes voters are out there that aren't voting? We don't really know that. But I don't know that we have really all this information is great, you still haven't got it to where they're gonna come out and vote yes. I don't know what you need to do exactly, I don't know that we're there yet. What's it going to take? So like I said, I'm just the idea guy here, I don't have the answer. I'm just stating that's how I feel about this. For whatever reason, those no voters, they're coming out in droves. And I don't know why the yes ones aren't.
I think you're right, and I don't think we've built a sense of urgency. And I think it's difficult to build that sense of urgency if people don't want to get involved. And you're right. When we went into the last levy last spring, we probably had 60, 65 people at our levy committee meetings. The calling that you're talking about, we can identify yes voters. We can, when people on a committee sit down and Kevin draws them up from the Board of Elections, we can see who voted and didn't vote. And you would be surprised the number of people that you would assume are yes voters and they don't go to the polls. You would be surprised. I know that our committee, when they looked at those, they were surprised. They really were. And I think that's going to be the secret. I don't know where we build that intensity. I think we've got some good ideas for things we want to do over the next several weeks to build awareness. I think some things we have to be cautious of is make sure that we're always truthful. I've heard the word come out, well, you've got mold in the basement. There is no mold in this school. There's a heck of a lot of dampness. But our custodians do one heck of a job of staying on top of that and keeping the mold out of here. And so I think you've got to be honest about something like that. I think we're honest when we say, hey, on the third floor back here, we had our beams drop 7 inches. I don't think we know where they've dropped anywhere else in the building. But that doesn't mean they haven't. So, maybe our campaign, like you, I don't have the absolute answer. I do believe the economy is a factor. I think it's a factor that we probably have over half of our citizens who don't have kids in school. But I can't imagine having a kid 3, 4, 5 years old and not being in here plugging for a building. I can't imagine that. I think our teachers have done the job. I mean, we proved that in this building in particular. We are excellent with distinction. We've done what we've been asked to do. But we need more banks of computers. We need more, we need more things for our people to stay ahead of the game. We need a decent media center that's, not having water come through it all the time. I'm not sure in many people's minds that builds a sense of urgency. When we had Linda, maybe you can share the situation when we had the problem on the third floor and the gentleman went to the bank.
Right, he was saying that, I think he made reference to how did we arrange that, or how did we get this, basically that it was not true, that it was false, that the beams were falling. There was a parent of a 4th grader who was standing behind him who said, I have a child who's in that room and I fear for her safety. I had a child last year who was the 4th grader underneath that room. We shored that up, but I still, was worried about my child being underneath there. And again, in the basement, we did move those rooms until they got it shored, just to ensure that if it did fall, the rooms underneath it didn't go. When we moved that room, we had to move the 3rd floor room to our office area. We didn't have a bright link in there. We didn't have adequate computers in there. We had to shove desks in there. It was a small space, and they had to stay there for the rest of the year.
I just think it's like fixing your car. You take your car in, something's wrong with it, and you choose to ignore it, you're rolling the dice that you're gonna have a major problem then if you don't get it taken care of. And somehow I don't know that it's completely safety, obviously that's a big concern, but it just seems like we need to build up more to get people to say yes. I don't know, I don't have the answer, I throw that out here. I hope there's board members here that you can maybe get some feedback on what we can do, because I'm sure that's why that other levy passed. I really think you finally stated, we have to cut this and that, and you were prepared to do it. And they knew you were serious about it. I don't know, so if this does not pass, are we ever in a position where we must build a building, and then we don't have state money? How much is that gonna cost? I don't know.
Frank, what are options on that? What happens if buildings get to that point?
Are we anywhere near that position?
Well, before the Ohio Schools Facility Commission came along, school districts were facing buildings becoming dilapidated. A lot of buildings are like this one, where the first building was built back in the 20s, and the only reason those buildings are still around and the older ones are is because they have concrete floors in them. Older than that, they were still using wooden floors, and those rotted or were fire hazards. But most of those buildings have been added onto, just like this one's been added onto, with an on-grade addition and then another addition after that. And those buildings are not real good learning environments because of all the stairs, and the classrooms are smaller. But up until Ohio School Facilities came along, starting in the late 90s and offering money to replace those bad schools, and they went to the poorest districts first, the ones that had the least tax basis per student. And they started right at the top. At the worst one, you get 100% of the money. If you're 10% of that list, you get 90% of the money. And those districts all leapt at the chance. I worked over in Gibsonburg, and I remember going to a meeting there, and they said that, you know, if there's a sale down at the grocery store and it's a third off on something, it's a good deal. If it's half off, it's a great deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen over there, they were getting 2/3 off. But your district has more tax basis than a lot of other districts. That's why you're, what, 32%? But it's still an awful good deal, and you can afford to replace it. Without those dollars, most districts weren't building new schools. They were plugging along, trying to build the old building or repair the old buildings. And I think what would happen here is you get down to the end, the state will get out of the business of repairing school district buildings pretty soon. It's all based on the tobacco tax, which they borrowed against, and it's all going to be gone. You're going to have to get back in it. You're going to have your own locally funded levy for $12 million, or maybe for a little less, to make emergency repairs, just to get by again for a while, until there's an atmosphere where somebody else will come in with outside tax dollars that'll let you build a new school. This is still the best program that's come along for a long time. You got, is it $7 million coming in from the state? That's going to disappear pretty soon, I'm pretty sure. Then you'll be back on the ballot trying to pass levies, all local money, to make probably smaller repairs. And you'll still be in an old building. You'll just be throwing good money after old buildings.
You know what, and the renovations that we talked about, 12 million or so, we don't even know for sure if it would be that amount. It's probably going to be more, because we don't know once we peel back the walls how many other beams are rusted through. So I bet you it would cost more, just because I'm in the construction industry, I know.
I think you're right. The state just has their standard analysis they came through, and they came up with $12 million. But I did state inspections down in Southwest Ohio, and we never found a building with rusting beams and beams that were falling. That's just unbelievable to me.
One thing I'd like to emphasize too, when we had those beams fall and we had the rusting, we invited people to come in. I had no takers on people to come see what the situation was. We did have one program where we came in and said, we'll open the classroom for you, please come upstairs. And I think I had 4 parents come up and actually see the area. We do have our book here today, if anyone wants to see what that damage was.
Well, I do want to make it clear, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox. I'm obviously, I feel like I'm passionate about the schools, and understanding the other side, but I certainly want to make it clear, I think it's a great thing that you guys are doing, and you nailed it. I think we all are in this together, and we do need more parent involvement, and that's why I'm here. I'm trying to help in that area, but I did want to say, hopefully that was not taken as a slam, that you're not doing your job by getting the awareness. I was just a comment, frustration, if you will. I can't believe how innovative I've seen the communication has been great with the text alerts. I mean, the phone calls, the emails. I mean, there's some very, Facebook now, I mean, very good, innovative things going on, which I think I'm very pleased to see that. I'm not sure how we get that excitement to vote. I coming here too, I think it's a challenge. It's a big challenge, so I don't know the answer.
I'd like to say just a little bit, because being around here all my life, and I went to school when we consolidated back in '68. I was in junior high at the time, and we're a pretty unique school district, and we're unique because we're definitely two communities making one school. And there used to be a lot of talk early on, Woodville won't pass, Elmore will pass, but as you see, both communities did not pass this bond. And I still believe, I heard a statistic today in the levy committee that was very troublesome for me, was 30% of our students are poverty. And I've been all along, I hear communication is why we don't pass. And I'm not a real strong advocate. I think that's a lame excuse, because I think there's been a lot of communication. I still believe the economy is dictating a lot of this. But we have to tell these people that we do have to come up with some way to build new schools. Because when I look around the neighboring schools, and if I'm outside this box at Woodmore, Elmwood, Lakota, Gibsonburg, Genoa, I don't know what would bring a family to the school district right now. And because I have a daughter that's moving, not due to the fact that it's got to do with the school district. She's taken 3 kids down to Columbus because the job took her. Her comment was to me, I'm glad we're moving. And it hurt, because she's frustrated. I think the ownership has to come with this whole school district, but we still have to realize this economy's tough. But I don't know where we can threaten, to go back to if I use the word threaten, I'm on the school board, of getting people to pass this, because I will tell you, it's going to take care of itself before long. We won't be a school district. I mean, I hate to say that, because you're just not going to get people to stay in the school district when you're in competition with school districts that's got safe buildings, brand new buildings. It's just not going to happen. And I don't know how you can tell people we're going to close the door in 2015 or 2016. What you hope is you can get the compassion in the school district to say, hey, listen, we need a new school. And it's going to take them yes votes that are not voting. Because since I've been here, we've had, 40% no's, 40% yeses, and that 20% that doesn't, they'll go either way. So, the no's that want to vote no are probably never going to change their mind. There might be some things. But the passion and the compassion out of this school district's got to step up to the plate a little bit. Because we're going to continue to lose young families and people coming in the school district, because it's not going to be safe in this building. And it's going to take care of itself. I really believe that. Either we're going to pass this thing, or we're going to continue to lose people. And after a while, we'll be a Betsville. We'll be a very small school district. Look at the houses for sale. Unbelievable. People they don't want to stay in the school district anymore. So, really preaching to the choir here. That's the sad part. I look around here, and it's really preaching to the choir. How do you get that out there with a threat? I don't know, but I don't think it's communication. I would tell you in the last 2 years, the communication's been there. A lot of times people don't want to hear the truth, and they'll say they're not being told. But Mr. Fernball, I guarantee you, has done a tremendous job of getting that out there. So I appreciate what you say, because that's the same frustration I feel.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this kind of set in stone. You guys had this in last month. Is that correct, the millage that you guys are asking for? I guess, what's the time frame on this project? I mean, if the mill passes, how long is it going to be before the architect has the usable, bidding to bid? I guess they say bid.
OSFC dictates the schedule, and even their guidebook says it's going to be 14 to 18 months before we're out to bid.
because of the steps they take us through.
Okay, so if you're looking at, then we're looking at October of 2013, going into a winter, I mean, is there any, I mean, how confident are we on that 15 million? I mean, because I lost numerous jobs being a low bidder and so 10%. You know, is there any concessions that we have built into this? Okay, we really don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this, that could bring that down to 10%. Because if you pass the levy and then all of a sudden the bids come out at 15% above that, we're starting over, or?
The state will step in if construction costs go up because of inflation. They'll step in and adjust the budget.
You know, you follow the Olympics, you know, everything, schools, drop the car. What happened 20 months ago? I guess that's, I just want to know how much we built into that. But you said the state.
Those are state numbers. They give you so many square feet per student and then so many dollars per square foot. Those are their numbers, and I think I know they're higher than they need to be right now. They're trying to build that hedge in there for higher prices, and they make the commitment. If there's a big jump in construction costs, they'll come in and they'll move it up.
Now, what about prevailing wages? This would not be a prevailing wage, correct?
The state of Ohio has removed prevailing wage rates as an allowable requirement in any OSFC project.
So my concern is that who's doing the inspection? I mean, I you know, is it architect doing the inspection, is it actual OSFC or whatever that company?
Yes, all of those. I will have a construction superintendent on the site. OSFC will have a person reviewing it, but there'll also be a construction manager from OSFC whose job it will be to enforce the specification requirements. There are a couple of projects around this area. I had one of them, got in trouble with a non-union contractor. It wasn't necessarily because he was non-union, he was just too small for the job and caused problems in plumbing. But the state, I think, has improved their surveillance to make sure that quality control is maintained.
Does anybody sitting here have any say on what goes into that bid? Like with geothermal, say geothermal is $1 more than the boiler. Does the state make that decision just based on dollars and cents? They take the cheapest option, or?
No, they don't take the cheapest option. Their buildings are not real cheap. In fact, they're requiring that the building have a silver LEED certification, and that geothermal is a major step towards getting that. And they've increased the project budget to pay for LEED certification. No, that'll be something that they'll go for. If we test it and the ground heat exchange is high enough, they'll want it done, no question about it.
As far as all bidding process and bid review, that's all going to be handled by them, and nobody here would be able to see that, even if there's some pretty generic language in it, but that makes sense.
Well, I'll review bids and make recommendations to the state and to the local board of education. It's not just the state. You know. We have to follow their guidelines, but you do have local authority to add or subtract from the building specs what you want to do. You just have to meet their minimum guidelines.
So on a building like this, demo in a building like this, typically they would probably have either the site contractor or after the building's built, have a demo contractor come in and demo.
They will bid the demolition of this building separately. When the new building's ready to occupy, the district has a year to decide whether to tear this building down or not. And they'll have a separate bid package within that year, and it'll be bid as a building demolition, separate from the rest of the construction. That's part of the advantage here, is that this building doesn't have to be demolished to make room for the new building. There's space out there to build it. This building can go on and serve the students until that building's ready to go. And then you come back and demolish this building. A lot of districts don't have that extra space to be able to manage that. Toledo kept moving kids all over the place because the sites weren't big enough to do that.
I guess that then what kind of makes me nervous is where the majority of the extras possibly could be, we're doing it at the end of the job. You know, I mean, we don't know what's here, and if, you know, there's different ways to manage the demolition of this, whether the material's crushed, and, you know, we got 2 quarries here, So we got an abundance amount of stone, so we're not selling any crushed concrete. We may be able to give it away instead of disposing of it, paying for the disposal of it.
Yep.
But I mean, all that stuff like that, we're not gonna have any say in that. That's just gonna be, I mean, with your review and to the state.
Yeah, they have a budget established, I think it's $300,000 or $400,000 for demolition. And they'll let me bid it, saying, you know, we don't want it all put in the landfill, but the contractor can make a decision, what's the best way to recycle the building. You know, you can certainly recycle the steel, you can recycle all the wood products out of it, you can take the ceiling tile someplace, you can take the carpeting someplace, but they'll take the most cost-effective way to do it. And that doesn't mean taking it to the landfill. You won't take this
Well,
basement to the landfill.
I'm not environmentally a heck or less. I mean, it just costs us $35 a ton to take it there, so.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.